This is Beyond the Letter.
We got Jeff Osborne with us today that's going to be a contributor in the conversation.
Hey.
A lot of people listen to us on audio, Jeff.
Okay.
So I just want to set them up so that people understand that you and I are pretty similar in skin complexion.
Right. Yeah. Well, you're a little bit darker.
Yeah. Just so as people are imagining this conversation, they can imagine that you and I, we really have the same tans.
Right. Exactly.
You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I love it.
Thanks for being here, man.
We take great pride that most of us here are part of the 12 tribes of Israel.
Most of us. Who's the exception?
Black and brown. We're all black and brown in here.
Yeah.
There you go.
Well, let's get to it. What do you think about this Black Israel?
Dude, listen, on the way over here, I watch every episode of try to prep myself because I know y'all come in me. My wife was
You watched every episode of Atlanta.
Hey, my wife told me, she said, baby, now you know your reach. You know our brothers. Like, make sure you come correct. So, man, I came in. I've done a lot of podcasts. I'm a little nervous.
You have your own podcast right now, too.
Yeah, man. Bros to Men.
Bros to Men.
Yeah.
That's
a couple
great.
of
I'll watch it.
high school friends I've known since, actually 13. And we're now in our 30s, mid-30s, and just talking life.
So nice.
Man, why does your voice sound so much better than my... Hold on. Is something wrong with my mic, Jermaine? Because he sounds like Morgan Freeman when he talks. And I feel like I sound more like David Spade.
No, I'm a little hoarse because of my daughter's soccer game. She was in her playoffs, so
Okay.
I was screaming.
He's a referee.
Yeah, why you just gonna blast me like that, dog? I am.
Well, he's
an
an assistant referee.
Yeah, I'm not ready for this. Dang, that just made it worse. I was feeling kind of good about myself, and then you said that. Yeah, my wife needed one, so
I feel like, how do I add that depth in the voice that you have? I feel like you guys are doing something to his mic.
You can't identify as a good voice person. You're screwed. There's no surgery you can do. No surgery.
I just want a better radio voice is all it is, man.
Yeah.
Do you know much about the Black Israelite stuff? Because with Kyrie, Irving, and everything like that, that's pretty big right now.
Dude, I knew you guys were
No,
going to go.
I don't have any desire to go into it.
I can't look.
Look,
here's what I can say. I can't speak on it because I don't know enough. I'm not an expert in it. I'm not diving into it. But here's what I do know. A lot of people get tripped up when they come in contact with a Black Israelite because of how well they can recite scripture. And a lot of people get intimidated by how they recite scripture. And if you're not learned in your scripture and the way they can kind of twist it, they come in and they're strong and they're confident in what they say, that if you don't know your word or you don't know where they're twisting it or you don't know the context of it, it's intimidating.
Yeah.
Because a lot of them, like, they know the Bible and they'll use it to twist it. So you find a lot of the people who are there are either you're not learned in the word or you don't have any type of religious background, and because of how well they're able to be able to talk and be able to orate, it'll get you.
Yeah, right.
It'll get you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's similar to, Jehovah's Witness, Mormonism. They all kind of have their set, maybe 20 or 30 verses that are their kind of mantras on why they're able to believe what they believe. And so if you kind of push out of any of those 20 or 30 verses, they'll kind of start to get really shaky, but they're really good at memorizing those
100%.
Few verses that are basically proofs for why they think they're right? Jehovah's Witnesses do that. They'll come to your door and you'll say, oh, I'm a Christian. They'll say, oh, but, and they'll name about 10 verses that make you think that, you're taking scripture out of context, which isn't necessarily true. But I think it's just relevant because, I think a lot of people don't realize is conversations that they see with Kanye West right now, conversations that you hear Kyrie, who got kicked out of the NBA, is what a lot of people may not know without them saying it is they're very empathetic towards this new kind of ideology called Black Israelites, and where you consider yourself whatever, a Christian or a Black Israelite, and as an African American, you find proofs in the Bible to say, oh, we're really Jewish. which is good context for people to know in, statements maybe like Kanye, statements like Kyrie. These are individuals who at the moment really truly believe that they are descendants of Judaism and Abraham. And so they think that they can talk on the subject, where there are other individuals, say Jewish people, who say they're not. You're not. So you
why
can't
do you
speak on
why
it.
do you think apart from the scripture aspect, why do you think it's so appealing right now to specifically young black men? Why is this belief, philosophy, religion, even, why is it becoming so appealing?
Because we're searching for origin. I think when you think about I'll even bringing it even closer. This last year, I went through this, not this wokeness, but I had been achieving this level of success, right? And in the middle of the success, I look at my wife. My wife is full-blooded Mexican. There's nothing else in her. She's just Mexican. So when I watch her look at her heritage, and I'm watching her understand her culture, and this is what we eat, and this is the language that we speak, and this is what we wear, and this is Dios de los Muertos, and and all of these different things that they do, I'm sitting here looking at myself, and I know that in my bloodline, I'm mixed with so many different things. Which one do I connect to? Right. And so I found myself in this place as a 35-year-old man who's achieved all of this success. I was longing for this connection point of, where do I come from? Where is
like a heritage?
My heritage. Where do I come? Do I do 23andMe? Do I do Ancestry.com? Right?
Yeah.
Do I do all
and
these
then
things?
just start wearing a dashiki,
Right. Like, am I African? I'm light skinned. I went
Yeah.
to South Africa. I've been there several times, and I've never been in a place surrounded by so many black people and not felt black.
No, dude. Wow.
Well, in South America.
No, this is no in South Africa.
Oh,
Like,
South Africa. Yeah,
This is like, this is for real. Like, I'm out there and I'm walking around, and I've got all of these people who know where they're from in Africa.
Yeah.
And I come out here from there from America, and I have no idea where I'm from other than Southern California.
Yeah.
I don't have, you're black, but I'm not necessarily African black. I'm not that type of dialect. My mom is mixed with German. My great great grandmother was full-blooded Irish.
Yeah.
And then my mother's side of the family were one of the first blacks, trip on this, in Boston, who owned black slaves. And so I'm trying to figure out where is this connection point, and this is why I think that it's so appealing, because one of the things we lack is, I just don't want to say that I'm black or I'm African American.
Yeah.
Like, where's the depth of that? Where does that come from? So I think when you find somebody that connects you back to your culture. So prime example, right after I'm going in the middle of this, my auntie Erlene, incredible motivational speaker, multimillionaire, done incredible things, coming from Roxbury, Boston, which is the hood. She goes on to do amazing things, and she is our family historian. So I'm tripping out. We go to church here, and right after church, we head over to Spaghetti Factory. So we're at the Spaghetti Factory. My grandfather, who was one of the founders on the East Coast of the Black Panther movement, is light skinned, red hair, freckled, like massive drug lord back in the day. He's sitting at the table. Now he's saved. I got my auntie Erlene, who's in her 70s, traveled the world historian. And I got my auntie. And so I'm like, yo, where do we come from? So she starts breaking up, breaking down our whole heritage, where we come from, what that looks like. And then I find out that our direct descendant is from King Suni Ali Bear out of Ghana. Not only that, but she has the slave tags from his great-great-grandson, who was taken here to, I think it was South Carolina. And then all of that started. So now I'm beginning to realize, okay, shoot, there's Ghanaian inside of my blood. Okay. And so there's just this desire to know where you come from, because you've been told what you aren't for so long. You're not this, you're not that. Where do we fit? And so I think there's a lot of us, referring to young black men as well, and just even black people in general, who want that validation that's coming from who we are as individuals.
Yeah.
So do you think it's a good thing that it's becoming more mainstream, more popular? Do you think it's kind of a mix of good and bad? Where do you, like, as far as like, the impact that it's having on the community, the Black community. Is it more positive than negative, more negative than positive? What?
Okay, so this is where okay, we're gonna go, because I was recently I feel like you definitely want to have a vantage point of where you come from. I think it's important to know where you come from. When we were in Israel, I was trying everything within my power to see if I was Sephardic Jew. You know what I'm saying? Like trying to be by the Western Wall. I wanted one of them things, right? Yeah. And so Adam's over there like getting the thing wrapped around him, and I'm watching him just standing there like in the corner, like I'm just on the wall, just got a hand on there, slipped a prayer in there.
So people may not know the Western Wall in Jerusalem, which is where all the Jews pray. If you have any percentage of Jew in you, there's synagogue priests who are there, and they'll put the whole talit and prayer stuff on you so that you could pray on the wall as a Jew would. And so
how do you prove that
they'll just ask you. You don't have to prove it.
Oh,
okay.
Is there like an identification card?
That counts, right?
Yeah, right. I was trying to find
They draw your blood.
Right.
Chelsea,
Blood test.
unfortunately, they don't let the women do it. But
See,
Yeah.
don't even list now.
Yeah.
We go to Israel in 2 weeks.
Go, yeah.
yeah.
So we can't do it.
Well, no, your women don't do it. They just they have to have their head
Wow.
covered.
Yeah,
is
yeah,
all.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh wow.
But anyways,
That is interesting.
sorry about that.
Yeah.
So that's what Jeff's referring to is
Yeah. I was
is if we get to go up and say then Jeff, they're like, you're a brother.
Yeah,
you
you- man, you
they
just-
don't even offer him.
They
They
don't
offer
even-
like a group of
That's
dudes.
messed
Like,
up.
But
look at
Trip,
Jeff, right?
okay, but Trip on this.
yeah.
My last name Osborne is actually a Jewish last name.
Wow.
Osborne,
Listen.
really?
Yeah, absolutely. And if I traced it, and it actually traced back
Osborne.
to Sephardic background, but I
Osborne,
can't connect it. But you know what I'm saying? I can't. But
Well, I know Whoopi Goldberg's last name is definitely Jewish.
Yeah.
Goldberg.
yeah. But look here. Going back to what you said though, I think there is a great part of trying to identify where your heritage comes, but I don't personally subscribe or ascribe, however you want to say it, to the Black woke movement. Like, this is real talk, because I believe that yes, you want to recognize and acknowledge who you are in where you are, but I think it's crossed the line. I think it's crossed the line to where now you want to hand. People are so quick to say Black Lives Matter, and they're so quick to throw all these things on just because of the color of my skin, and not because of what I'm contributing or what I'm doing. And so I feel like it's a very fine line that they're trying to throw us anything and everything, almost as a pity party, because we are Black. And that's how I feel. So I'm sitting in this circle. I got asked to go with Pastor Rick Warren, love him. Got asked to go to his ranch with some of the biggest pastors. We would all know him. We're sitting in this circle, so they want to talk about this whole.
Bunch of black pastors, right?
No,
No.
nah.
This isn't the thing I don't know. This is something different. Than
They had black pastors, they had
okay.
white pastors, they had Anglican priests and Orthodox
But the
priests.
conversation was around
But it was
the
around
black
this whole thing,
community.
like, how do we reach this
wow.
black
Okay.
community,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so it's in the wake of all of these protests and all of these things, and I'm sitting there and I'm watching these black pastors who have large churches, like, I mean, just giants in the faith. And they're like, it's the white person, and a white man did this to my dad, and a white man did this, and it's a white man. Then I watch white people, pastors, stand up. It's white people, it's white privilege, it's this and it's that. And I'm watching them, and then I raise my hand. I say, can I say something? And they said, yeah. I said, I think my context is a little bit different, but just to give you a background, I grew up, both my parents were home, in the house, so they're not divorced. My dad grew up in segregated Virginia. I grew up in Huntington Beach, California, born and raised in Orange County for the first half, second half in the IE in Chino Hills. But we were homeless for 3 years, slept in the back of cars. We were on government assistance. I'm an ex-gang member, ex-drug dealer, ex-felon, and I am a black man who's tattooed all over. Yeah. And so I want to give you my context of what I'm about to say.
Who also did time in prison, right?
And I went. That's it. I was in prison, incarcerated in prison, and so I said to him, I said, "Here's my biggest challenge that I have. We're so quick to yell out Black Lives Matter, but where are the Black Lives Matter marches in Chicago when 475 black-on-black homicides happen? Where's the Black Lives Matter movement there? When we talk about all of the music that we're projecting out there and we're buying it and we're doing it, where's our accountability for our own people? When we talk about where we are and how we're raised, you're taught as a young black man or a young black girl in most cases that you're already starting off at a deficit because of the color and the pigment of your skin. And so you can't get out because the white man is holding you down. So you're already starting off at a deficit before you even begin life. But we're doing that. And I said, my father taught me something. My dad taught me this. He says, son, don't allow somebody to judge you by the color and the pigment of your skin. Let them be able to call you out and judge you by your character and who you are. And here's the one thing that I don't get, especially when it comes to this whole black woke movement and where it is. Where there's some prejudice, is there prejudice out there? 100%. In my life, the craziest thing is I've had more prejudice against my own people towards me than I had from white people. Because now I'm not black enough because I speak proper or because I grew up. So now I'm not black enough, but I'm in the white space and I'm not white enough to be black. And so I'm in this tension where you have this prejudice on both sides, just as bad as where, regardless of what it is. Now, I'm not taking away slavery. It's jacked up. And I do agree that there are things that are set up towards a certain community like Planned Parenthood and all of these things that originated to eradicate our people. When I say our people, I'm referring to blacks. The challenge with the woke movement is I want you to recognize me, validate my blackness, validate the color of my skin. And I told them this is my biggest challenge. I feel like this generation, I'm 35. Nobody has ever told me in my entire life that I can't sit at a restaurant, I can't go to a store, I can't buy shoes, I can't go to a country club, I can't go to a mall, nobody's ever told me that because of the color of my skin, and I'm 35. And most of these kids who are out here protesting, a lot of the people, they've never been told that. And so what we've done is we picked up this grudge from our great-great uncles, our great-great-grandmothers, and we brought it into where we are now. Do we want equality in a lot of areas? Absolutely. When it comes to how you want to be treated, nobody wants to be judged, and that prejudice is everywhere. But with this whole black woke movement, what frustrates me is we want to hold one group accountable, but we don't hold ourselves accountable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and that's a part that jacks me up, especially in the church, because we got enough faith to believe, and God can wipe away your debt, and He'll make it rent free, and we believe that God can miraculously wipe away debt, but God can't override somebody who's got a prejudiced heart when it comes to a position.
Mm-hmm. Right.
If I gotta rely on somebody else to
be careful, Jeff. This isn't a preaching podcast.
No, but like I get passionate about this because this has been an area in my life that I've been plagued on, and people have judged me because if I gotta wait for somebody else to validate me because of my skin, and I don't get my identity or my affirmation from the Bible of who He says I am, then I'm gonna be stuck. And I would have stayed in prison. I would have stayed having a regular, conviction mentality. So the whole woke movement is something that I love how they're trying to bring people back to their heritage and show them like, yo, you're more than what that is. Mm-hmm. You're more than what people are saying. You're more than rappers and thugs and artists, and know your history and your culture. I think that's great, but I don't want it to become a glorified victim movement.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right, that's a good point.
Yeah.
And just like from a Christian perspective, the way I see it is, it's interesting if you can trace your genealogy to some Semitic roots and whatnot. But as a Christian, it's like it doesn't matter either way, because as a Christian, the fundamental basis of our faith is now Christ has divided the dividing, or He's demolished the dividing wall of hostility between Jew and Greek, between slave and free. There's neither Jew nor Greek. There's neither slave nor free. There's neither male nor female. We are all one in Christ Jesus. So I think the issue comes when you start to your identity becomes in your genealogy,
100%.
As opposed to it being in Christ. So the way I see it is if that makes you feel good about yourself to know your ancient roots, more power to you. God bless you. But as a Christian, that does not matter.
But you can't deny, and you definitely can't deny somebody's origin of where they come from. So when somebody says, and you hear this argument, oh, I don't see color. I get what they're saying, but you cannot look at me and not see color. Who I am, how I talk, the flavor of how I do things. It comes from my community. It comes from that. So you can acknowledge those things, acknowledge where they come from. Like I tell everybody, I promise you I'm Blaxican. If I do Ancestry.com and I find 1% Mexican in me, I'm getting Hecho in Mexico tatted on my back. Like I'm all the way there. But I acknowledge that. I love that. But when it becomes you look down on a group of people because of their heritage, because of their culture, because of where they are, or you set things up so that they can't succeed, then it becomes muddy water.
Yeah, I think there's three things. I think there's heritage, culture, and then there's identity.
Yeah, that's huge.
And I think a lot of people are mixing the three. So like what you just said about no Jew nor Greek, that's an identity thing, right? And I think the Black Israelite movement is pointing that in terms of an identity. They're like, oh, look at the 12 tribes of Israel. That's us. That's our identity.
We're the chosen people.
That's very dangerous. And then philosophically, it's cherry picking. And so you're not looking at the Bible as a whole. You're just looking at the Bible and you're cherry picking. You're saying, oh, that sounds good. That sounds good. Here's one philosopher or theologian one time that once said this, and you're not even weighing whether it's true or not. You're just saying, oh, it looks good. It feels good. It fits with what I'm comfortable with. So therefore now it's my identity. And so I think, I work with a lot of young Black men because our church has a lot of young Black men, and they are finding the Black Israelite movement, these statements by Kyrie, Irving, these statements by Kanye West, they're finding it appealing because what they're doing is they're not consciously saying we've missed out on a heritage. They have a lot of them have a culture, because whether you're from Inglewood, whether you're from North Carolina, because you could take a Black person from Southern California and a Black person from Georgia, and they're totally different. So other than the color of the skin, they have almost no relatability. So maybe their music, but that's about it. So culturally, they are culturally different. What?
I disagree.
Why?
You say they have no relatability.
Well, you always have a relatability, but culturally, in terms of the culture, like you being from Huntington Beach are very different than a guy in Atlanta who's African American, who grew up in an Atlanta culture. Now you're gonna relate by your ethnic roots, right?
Okay.
And maybe if you had similar music likings, but could you not do that with a white person that was from that same area?
No. Well, and here's why I say, yes and no. When you talk about a Black person from Atlanta, you talk about a Black person from Huntington Beach, you put me in the middle of the hood in Atlanta or the middle of the hood in Jacksonville, they may have some things that are their slang or how they search certain things, but culturally, there's an overall laying thing culturally amongst Blacks that you connect with. There are things that are culturally that Black people just know. There are things culturally, don't matter whether you can be a Black in Alaska, but if you've been around your community and you know your community, there's things that you connect to. Even though I'm not from Atlanta, I may not know your slang.
You said though, but if you've been around your community.
Yeah, well, I'm talking about Blacks. Like there are things that we do.
That's a cultural indication. That's a cultural indication.
Explain.
So if you take a Black person that was born in an only white community, you're saying that same click and connect will happen? Never been around a Black community in their life.
Okay.
So that's where I'm saying like the culture that symbolizes a culture. Like me being more raised in an African American culture, I do feel more comfortable around African Americans than I do amongst Hispanics. I don't know Hispanic innuendos.
Okay.
Like when you're around Hispanic, someone says something about pozole or whatever. Like if Nancy invited me over to her house, her being from Guatemala, right? I would feel like an alien. I really wouldn't know. And now they would welcome me and all that. But if you're just saying, would there be an instant cultural connect? There wouldn't. I would have to understand a lot. Even when I've historically been in a white person's home, because growing up, I had never been in a white person's home. My mom wasn't close with her family, so I never went to my mom's families, almost ever. So, and I'd only see my dad's Hispanic side only on Christmas. That was it.
I'm telling you this.
So I feel more comfortable. So that's where I'm saying there's a culture. So there's heritage, there's culture, and there's identity.
Okay.
You get saved, your identity's in Christ.
Right.
Your culture is what you're raised around.
Yep.
Your heritage is where your family's from. That's your last name. That's your race. That's your everything like that. And I believe the one thing African Americans are truly missing is the heritage 100%. Component. That was taken from them.
100%.
The average 95% of African Americans in America, their last name is their slave owner's name.
100%.
Like, I can't ask Jeff realized, oh, I'm from Ghana. Well, what was your last name? You know, like maybe you'll be able to trace it, maybe not, right? Like if you can do the DNA that far, maybe. But the average African American will be like, I don't know what my pre-last name was prior to slavery. All I know is I'm the Matthews plantation, and that's why my name is Eric Matthews, because that was my slave owner. That's a kind of messed up heritage. I don't blame an African American wanting to distance themselves from that heritage as much as possible. And that's why I think the Black Israelite statements that I don't agree with it. I think it's theology. I think it's theological erroneous. I think they cherry pick the scriptures. But when I talk to a young Black man who's wrestling with it, I'm very empathetic to say, if I met someone who was like a white KKK person using the Bible, I'd be like, you're an idiot. Like, right. you're using the Bible for like that. I would think you're foolish. Like but when I meet someone who's African American, like a young man or young woman who's wrestling with it, with this Black Israelite identity, I'm very empathetic because they want the heritage. They don't have that. I have some of that with my family, whether it was my culture, but it's also my background. Like I know that my great grandfather came from Spain,
right?
And I know, you know, maybe historically our family has done this and this and this. There's this cultural identity that you have. And a lot of people, what's happened, like, let's just say you're from Louisiana or North Carolina. If you talk to an African-American person about their heritage, more than likely what they're going to do is they're going to explain their culture. So 100%. If they're in Louisiana or they're in North Carolina, they're going to talk about their barbecue. They're going to talk about things they do on Friday night. And that's a cultural thing. That's not, if I ask Nancy, who's from Guatemala, like her culture, she could, or her heritage, she could go deep into Guatemala. Like, this is the story and this is how my family got here and this is this, and be very proud of, like, we came here from America because we were searching this. But if I ask an African American, tell me about your heritage, it's like, well, man, like what you just said, like my family was slaves and we was brought from Ghana to here and this and that. Like, that's not much to like get excited about. It's aware. I mean, it connects you deeper. So a young Black person, I totally am empathetic that they look at this new wave of discourse happening and going, well, that helps me. Now I'm an Israelite. That's what it is. That's what I've been missing. I don't agree with it, you know, but
that was the point that I was making.
You know,
but I specifically, like, there's a difference between those who are just into tracing their genealogy and finding that connection with where they are in the world,
right?
And the religion of the Black Hebrew Israelites, which is very law driven, which in my understanding of it, and I could be wrong, but in my understanding, it's just replacing one ethnic supremacy point of view with another ethnic supremacy point of view. And that's when it becomes a religion that is anti-Christ, in my opinion. But yeah,
because it becomes identity centric. I mean, we use
it becomes racial. It becomes a racial ethnic superiority, similar to white supremacy, similar to other sorts of ethnic supremacies,
or towards.
Well, I mean, they're having
towards Judaism, like Peter was doing.
When they're preaching on the streets and quoting their Isaiah verses and Deuteronomy verses, and they're by having white people kiss their feet, that's satanic. When I look at that, white people kissing their feet, I see as an anti-Christ religion, because what I see is one, like I said, ethnic supremacy in exchange for another. They're fighting fire with fire, and as a Christian, Christ is the only one that can divide. I mean, that can abolish the dividing wall of hostility between the races, between the ethnicities, between the cultures. Christ, that's what makes Christianity unique. It's not a tribal religion. It's not a tribal religion. Right. We transcend tribes. We transcend cultures, and so. Well,
when you look at this idea of what you're saying, even with the Black Israelites, Adam, I love what you said. I love how you talked about heritage, because that's exactly what we are desiring. When you look at the Willie Lynch letters, even when they began to, Willie Lynch was one of the prominent slave trainers that came from the West Indies. And his Willie Lynch letter that he wrote, he said that what you want to do is you want to remove their mother language from a slave, and you want to remove their history. because as long as they have their history and they understand where they're coming from, then they will always resist what we're trying to tell them. And so what we need to do is we need to break the mind and keep the body. How do you break the mind? You take the strongest person that you can see. In that instance was the strongest slave that you would see, beat him into an inch of his life, kill him in front of everybody to show, listen, if that was your strongest, we're even stronger. But one of the things that was so powerful is he said, listen, when you're breaking a slave, you're not paying attention to the generation in front of you. You're focusing on the generation to come, because if you break them bad enough, they'll break their offspring in their developmental stages to where you no longer have to do it yourself. And the challenge is when you look at a lot of the ideologies that we carry in the Black community, like I talked about earlier, of you're starting with the deficit. White man is against you. You're going to have to overcome a lot of things in your life that's harder than ever before. My father never taught me that. I got chased out of skate parks by skinheads. They told me to go back to Riverside County. At that point, I didn't even know what that was. I was like, what's Riverside County, right? But because I never subscribed to that mentality, my father never instilled that in me. When those prejudice moments came, I was able to just kind of, they're tripping. Like, this one person has this thought. In addition to it, with what you said, looking at this idea of our identity, of our heritage, where we're coming from, what does that look like? With these people saying, kiss my feet, if you're white and you're doing this, there is still in our Black community this need and this desire for reparation, payback. There's got to be something that was given to us. And one of the arguments, and I haven't studied this long enough, so I'm not going to touch perceive, but a lot of the conversation amongst a lot of our friends has been this idea that if you look at most of those individuals who have been taken from their land, or any type of the things that happened to that level of atrocity, there was some type of reparation that was done. That's what they say. But when you look at the Black community, the idea is we were promised 40 acres and a mule, never got it. You're told, hey, listen, you're free now, go ahead and get your head start now. But by that time, land was already bought up, things were already put in place. So a lot of that argument is, man, we started off at a deficit and we built a lot of America. We built this on our backs in a sense, and now there was nothing that was left. So now there's this fire that says it's the white man and you guys got to pay us back for something. And that's a lot of that underneath. So when I do agree with the idea of you saying, man, what's the difference between replacing one ethnicity and making it supreme from another? What makes you any different than somebody else if you're coming into that area? And so I think there's a lack of understanding on both sides of it.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
But the emotion and the anger and the frustration is real.
Yeah. I think it's tough because we're very divided right now, and we all lack empathy, and it's kind of, you're on one side or the other, right? Like people will ask me, like, are you pro Kanye or against Kanye? Are you pro Kyrie? And I'm like, I don't know them, so I'm not pro or against. Like they're not friends. Like, if you were going through something, I'll be able to speak on it. I'll be like, that's my boy, Jeff. But you're like, are you pro Kanye? I'm like, listen, I don't know the guy, so I can't be pro or against anything that I don't know. What I can tell you is, with Kyrie's statements, like, I can empathize with this, but I can also disagree with this. Two wrongs don't make a right. So I can't, and I haven't seen the video that Kyrie promoted or whatever, but regardless, like, looking at it, I could be like, oh, there are elements that Kyrie could have agreed with, and there's elements that Kyrie could have disagreed with, but we live in this land of black and white. You're either for it or you're against it. You're for them or against them. Right. And it's a very dangerous place to be in, where you force people to choose a side every single day of their life. That's why we're so divided. That's why, as we're talking right now, I guarantee there are people listening to this podcast right now that are going, yeah, Jeff, or no, Jeff, no, Jeff. Like,
100%.
It's totally right away. They're like picking their side. And then we're going to hear in all the comments,
For some of the viewers that might be listening or watching, can you break down just really quick, because I probably should have asked this a while ago, what Kyrie and Kanye are promoting? What are they advocating? What is a Black Israelite? What is this movement?
So really? I just want to, it'll kind of connect with that, but I want to make myself clear regarding this point, and that is, I believe the spirit of what Kyrie and Ye are doing I am all for, as far as the major purpose of really just not being in anybody's control, and the ability for the Black culture to come together and to build thriving businesses and culture, and to just similar to what the Jews have done, similar to what Arabs have done. Asians have done as far as building their own autonomous communities,
an ecosystem.
That is self-sufficient. Like, I want nothing more than the Black culture to thrive economically, creatively, to build, and when you hear Ye speak and Kyrie is coming, well, Kyrie is dealing more with this cultural identity, and that's offending the Jewish people, right. But Ye is coming from more of his wanting to not be controlled by higher up forces in business, and so he's coming more from that angle, because he feels like, my understanding is that he feels like he can't fully spread his wings because of the powers that be that are in control. But I just want to make that clear, that kind of answers your question. You guys can add more to answering that question, but I just want to make clear that the spirit of what they're doing, I'm all for, as far as,
because they're fighting for their
Black culture thriving.
They're fighting for their people. And sometimes it can get twisted in fighting for the identity, but that's for philosophers. That's for thinkers. Right. That's like what we're doing right now. I think people have to be open that there are people, the heart of what we've always wanted to do in this podcast is to be a conversation of philosophy, a conversation of ideas, and not to really take us down to the level of making things so solid, of like, we want to be able to discuss these ideas, because that is the place for thinkers. You have people like Joe Rogan, like he's a modern day philosophical discusser. Right. You have to put these people in these frameworks, and whether you agree with them or not. I disagree with a lot of Joe Rogan says, but these individuals, Jordan Peterson and others, Jordan Peterson's daughter and stuff, Candace Owens or whoever, any more liberal thinkers, you got AOC, right, and Ilhan Omar, like, these individuals are important for our society to be able to let us to be able to discuss these ideas, and to then get to the level that we say, well, I disagree with that idea, though. I don't think everyone should get X, Y, and Z, or I do think this or that. And so it's important to talk specifically within Black culture, like what Caleb just said, and what Kyrie and Kanye are doing. And anyone could kind of look it up and see, because I don't want to interpret for them what they're saying, so you could do a simple Google search and break down more of what Ye said that got him in trouble. But really, it's been seen as the Jewish community who really feels like they're going after them. But I think what people are missing out, now I have a lot of Jewish friends. Me and Jeff have a lot of Jewish friends. We work with a lot of Jewish rabbis and synagogues who are very upset with their statements. And I understand that, because their statements have come off, because basically, in order for the Black Israelite conversation and movement to thrive, the movement itself has to disregard current Jewish people, right, in order for it to thrive. Yes. You have to push down in order to get up. And I've always had an issue with that, right? Mm-hmm. I've never been in agreement with the BLM, the movement, the organization, but the sentiment came out of a very important time. Absolutely. But the problem is when individuals swing all lives matter, the reason why I had an issue with all lives matter was because it's what it is it's a reactive word to shut something down. Yes. Yeah. So 100%. So you could just say, "Oh, all lives matter." We all agree with that. But when you say it, what you're saying is shut up with that statement. Mm-hmm. This statement needs to get louder. And that's a problem when you do that with anything. With anything. That is a very nasty way to discourse. So what happens is, with the issue with the Black Israelite movement, these statements, what they're doing, unfortunately, what Kyrie and Ye are saying is, in order for some of their things to thrive and what they're trying to accomplish, it's pushing down the Jewish community, right, as opposed to just separating the two and saying, here's the issue with our community. Here's what I want to do. And it just so happens that a lot of those individuals that are high up in media and stuff like that, they are Jewish. And here's the thing, I've done a lot of work with Jewish people who sit more on the, like, they would basically be known as not politically conservative, but they'd be known as conservative Jews, right? So you have individuals like Bernie Sanders, who's Jewish, but he's a liberal Jewish person. Chuck Schumer, who's another politician, he's Jewish, but he's a liberal Jewish person. Like, he's okay with abortion. He's okay with all these other things that would make things very liberal, right? And then you have conservative Jewish people who would say, who's a practicing Jew, who would say, I'm not okay with abortion. So just like in African American culture, white culture, there are Democrat white people and there are Republican white people. Like, that exists. So in the Jewish community, it is very diverse. Some are practicing, but Judaism is the only one where it includes your ethnicity, your race, and your religion. So you just can't speak to one or the other. They all get thrown in a cluster together when you make a statement. So like, I've been in the room with 10 Jewish people that are considered practicing Jews who are conservative in ideology in America. Like they believe in the sanctity of marriage between a man and a woman. They believe abortion should be illegal. So they don't agree with Bernie Sanders, who's Jewish. Yeah. They don't agree with media people who are putting out movies, like Jewish movie executives who are putting out trans movies and gay movies to young people, right? So I've been in the room with these Jewish leaders who have said, my Jewish people have it wrong in America. Yeah. They're not doing right when it comes to music. They're putting out music that's about gang violence. They're putting out music, and you could see a Charlemagne the God interview where they asked a Jewish music executive, hey, you're putting out music that talks about gang violence and drugs and blah, blah, blah.
Promoting it.
And the guy's basically response was, I got to put food on my family's table. It makes money in the black community. Yeah. It sells. So I've been in the room where Jewish people have literally said, my Jewish people, I'm not in agreement that they're okay with doing X, Y, and Z, right? And so the problem is in order for this think that Kyrie and Ye are doing is, in order to do that, it clusters everyone who's Jewish into the conversation. Well, by then disenfranchising it. But I feel not their statements, but the ideology that comes with it.
Yeah, and as a whole, I believe that you can't. Their two situations, I think, are coming from two different situations. When you look at Kanye and you look at the clips, he was like, yo, I'm jealous. I'm jealous of the Jewish people that they take care of their people the way that they do. I'm jealous that they establish things generationally for their kids. As a black man, he was referring to, I'm jealous that they have things set up and they've got power positions, and we as our own people don't have that. And so when he's talking about that, our people, black people, have been so used to this survival mode that we think that if somebody else becomes successful, it comes at my detriment.
Right.
And so we began to do it with Black Wall Street. We began to make our own money. We became successful. I'm talking a whole entire ecosystem, like what Kanye was talking about in Oklahoma. It was in Oklahoma. It was called Black Wall Street, is what it was called. Right. We had banks. We had money. We had wealth. We created our own aristocracy, if you will. And this is after the slave, the slave movement. We began to rebuild. To which at that time, the whites got upset about it and burned it down. We as a people have become so complacent with just receiving the paychecks that we're now getting to a place where we want to start writing the paychecks. We have been so complacent with leasing houses. Now we want to own houses. Now this movement that I can understand the underlying of where Ye is saying is, as a people, we've just gotten so comfortable with the handouts. But we're now in a place where a lot of people want to become the hand. Right. And you have that. Now, I'm a linguistics guy. Yeah. So language is everything. And I feel like in a lot of ways, there are ways to get that point across where you have to think things through. Because if that statement that he made was a bridging statement, and I want to make this very clear, and I'll reference it as a believer or anybody who's going to do great things in life, it's important to be a bridge. You can't be a bridge from one side. You got to be able to stand in the middle and be able to bridge both sides of it. And what Ye was trying to do was to bring an understanding to our people. And it started off years ago, before this statement, about owning the rights to your music. It was about being independent, not letting record labels take you, and you get comfortable because you got a $200,000 advance and you think you balling and cashing out
right.
because that was something that wasn't taught to our community. And so when you look at, I can understand where Kanye was coming from with his initial statement, like, I'm jealous, but it's not just like you said, it's not just the Jewish community, it's the Middle Eastern community, it's the Asian community. You take care of your people, and now there's this resurgence, if you will, that they're calling Black excellence. And I used to wonder why they used to always call it Black excellence. You don't hear white excellence, you don't hear Asian excellence. It's just is what we do. But we had to identify for ourselves what excellence is, because it's not something that is common amongst our people. And so when you say, this is excellent, this is what we do, this is who we are, this is Black excellence, we're owning businesses, we're doing these things, and you're having to reprogram because they've been taught for so long that you're good for playing ball, you're good for doing these things, with the exceptions of a Ben Carson or the exception of these people who go on to do great things. And so there is still a reprogramming, if you will, that needs to happen amongst our community. And so what Kanye was saying initially was, dude, I'm jealous because of how they do what they do. It's not coming from a place of anti-Semitism. I love them, but I'm jealous. Now I can't talk on the Kyrie side or the video because I haven't seen that.
But I also feel like in some of it, I feel like
some
of the interviews, though, he does give nuance, though, that the community that is Jewish has taken advantage of him and takes advantage of people. Which that's where people are having an issue with, because you blanketed the statement
and didn't say an individual.
And you've said it's like saying all white people this, all Black people this. And it just so happens that a lot of Jewish people are in power, and they do that for a reason. You and I have been in rooms with Jewish individuals where they say we are specifically in power because we never want the Holocaust to happen to us again.
100%.
And so they have.
It's a survival mechanism.
It's a way of. I've been in the room where they've said it. I have very rich people, billionaires who are Jewish. They say we have fought to be in power so that no one can do another Holocaust to us again.
Well, and also there's an important historical element. They're always driven out from country to country. And so they've had to develop this incredible intellect and this survival mechanism because they've always kind of been foreigners in a strange land. And so the way that they've survived as a community is not only by helping each other out and being united, but by having this incredible ability to make money. And to be financially prosperous.
And I think that's where we're at.
But people are getting mad because they feel like you're clustering a whole people group in a conversation.
Okay, and that was the challenge. Was if you're having a beef or somebody, you can't say all white people are prejudiced. You came in contact with somebody who happened to be white, who had a prejudiced thought, and that's what my dad taught me. All cops aren't prejudiced. You just ran into a group of fellas or an individual who had a prejudiced thought who happened to be white. But when it's no different than somebody blanketing Black statements that all Black people love watermelon and fried chicken. Like that's a statement that is a derogatory statement that's blanketed. And so I feel like even in that same way, with the linguistics of how things are going, and let's face it, let's be real. In this community or in this time and age, you say one wrong thing, they're going to clip it. They're going to cut it. They're going to, and there were some things that he said, that I was like, come on, Ye. Like he said, yo, I can say anti-Semitic statements and they can't cancel me. And I was like, bruh, like that ain't helping. Now you don't see the context of the whole script or the whole interview, but here's my question for you. I got a question for you guys in regards to this real quick.
I don't have an answer.
No. A lot of the things he talked about was, man, they're in control, that if they desire and they want to shut you down. When he said he was talking about the Jewish community. They control almost everything was his statement, and they want to shut you down. They can do it. And you look at his life.
He got shut down.
The bank told him, we don't want your money. He got shut down from all of his major deals of what he says. Does that validate his statement? Of him saying like, see, they're so in control. He went from being a billionaire to what I last heard, 400 million, having a net worth of 7 billion to 400 million overnight. And his statements that he said, they control everything. And if they don't like you, they can just shut it down and take it away. And we're watching it happen. So where is that line between him speaking the truth and you not liking the truth of what it is, or feeling like, oh shoot, he's bringing eyes to this situation, we got to change it? Like, where is that? Or is it like, yo, he made a statement against our people, We gonna
Well,
flex our muscle?
Yeah.
What does that look like?
Hey, this may be a terrible parallel, but I have a thought, so just go with me.
Yeah.
You have a son and a daughter, both teenagers. So
Right.
just imagine your son's like 16, 17. What is he, 11 right now or 13?
What?
Your son?
He's 14.
14 right now.
My daughter's 13.
Just imagine he's like 17, 18. He's living in his house, and every single day he looks at your wife and he just got the nastiest stuff to say. Like your mom, you're this, you're that, you don't do this, you don't do that. At some point, would you kick him out your house?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah. Why? Because
Well,
it's your house.
I check him first.
But yeah, but I mean, it's your house though, right?
Yeah.
Like, so when I look at this situation that happened with Ye, we just said it. The a lot of people who happen to be Jewish, I don't think they're all talking with each other. I don't think. Now in media, those businesses with like Facebook and Instagram and all, I think they are working
100%.
to mute certain conversations for sure. But I think when you look at Jewish individuals, this self-preservation thing that we talked about, they purposely work to be in control so the Holocaust can't happen to them again.
Right.
So, with Ye, it was like you said something to people who are in charge, they're going to kick you out their house.
That's true.
It's just their house.
Dang, bruh. Hold on. I was just marinating on that. Okay, that was a great parallel. That's
it's
true.
their house.
That's true.
So
That's true.
so they're in self-preservation mode right now. If you do anything
Right.
for the Jewish people or against them, they are going to, in a preservation mentality, go, okay, we got to shut this down because maybe Ye may be sincere, but like I think the FBI just issued a warning to all Jewish people to be careful because of so many calls and threats that have happened now
Because of the
these
situation.
conversations. And I'm not going to blame Ye or Kyrie or anything like that, but I think the reality is Jewish people have lived in enough communities that they see writing on the wall when something happens, and they happen to be able to do exactly what they set out to do,
Because
which
they have
was
the
to
power.
be in charge,
Yeah, and they do
to
it.
be able to shut out a resistance of. Now anyone can argue, but this is America, freedom of speech. But at the end of the day, you go say it on a corner, you're probably not going to be arrested by the police for it. Right. So there are people, there are actual Nazi marches that happen. One time I was in Claremont getting coffee and I saw guys in Nazi costumes walking. I said, what are you guys doing? They go, oh, it's a Nazi march today. And they completely had the freedom. Did I think it was absolutely ludicrous? Yes, they had the freedom to do it. Jewish people, though they probably had issue, they didn't individually be like, okay, we're going to shut down all their banks and we're going to call.
Yeah.
I'm going to call my uncle who runs J.P. Morgan and Chase. They're not connected like that, Like
Okay, so then is it so then hearing you guys speak this?
At least
then,
I don't think so. That that's my take on it. Right? Anyone's welcome to have their.
That was
own
a
thought
great
on it,
answer.
right?
Yeah, that was so. But do you think? But
Safe.
do you think it's a lack of then business savvy and business smart when it comes to and I say our community because I'm here. I'm the brother on the podcast, but this idea that because we may be so quick to make money or to sign or to make it, is that what I see and what I think it is? Then it's a call to level up when it comes to business contracts, when it comes to business deals. And then you have individuals like Dame Dash, you got individuals like Jay-Z, you got individuals like Nipsey Hussle who are talking about wise up, learn business so that you're not getting upset when you sign a contract and you're upset because you didn't get the percentage you want. You can't go and blame a Jewish person and the Jewish, umbrella for them doing it because they're running a business. So if you're coming in this business, then you need to know your business, and you can't get mad when you signed on the dotted line.
I would say the world is a hierarchy. Okay.
Taylor Swift got screwed
world,
too, though.
The world is a hierarchy, though. So understand the players in the hierarchy, and if you want to play the game, understand how you're going to play the game. But the world's a hierarchy. I think I'll just leave it at that. I'll just leave it at that. The world is a hierarchy.
At the end of the day,
understand who's in charge, who the boss is.
Yeah.
And
it's a game.
If I could
tread carefully.
Yeah. If I could package it all and put like a little bow on it, right? Ultimately, I think in your question you just asked, like, I think it's just dangerous to relate to anything in just a racial way.
Absolutely.
And in order to get that racial way, if you have to get there to get up to it by pushing something down, I think in all cases that is very dangerous. Mm-hmm. And so, America is a very unique place where we are very capitalistic in nature. And so majority of all decisions we make are surrounded around money. That's normally, so for a lot of individuals who happen to be Jewish, who happen to be very good at money, they will recognize where the money has to be made in all areas. Mm-hmm. And I've been in Jewish conversations. This goes all the way back to when they left Egypt and they took the gold with them,
100%.
And so it's something they're very aware of, and it's something that's been intrinsically built through all of Judaism. They've had to rebuild their temples many times, and they've had to be able to move out of Babylon and move out of Persia and do all these things 100%. And rebuild. 100%. So intrinsically, culturally, they're very good at being able to establish roots very well that are fiscal, right? But I think at the same time, I think any culture, I don't know. I don't know how I feel if someone's African American. I truly believe you have to be able to build up your own systems and practices. But I don't think it should be barriered just amongst race, and specifically as a Christian. It's super dangerous to go down just that road, and again, that's where I define it: identity, culture, and heritage, right? But I do think, I agree with what Ye is saying and Kanye saying, or Ye and Jay-Z and all that, and what Nipsey was trying to do, and what Nipsey was trying to do with health in the community was crazy. What he was trying to bring up, stuff my dad had been trying for years too, with holistic living and how all these food programs have been designed to really make the Black community unhealthy with heart disease and diabetes and stuff like that. And Nipsey was really trying to put together this documentary to help that. I think it's beautiful to totally endeavor in those things. Where I think it's bad is we have to do this so we could shut out this group of people, or we have to do this so we could do this. That's where we start getting to a place of complete dangerous segregation, which I don't think anyone's going in that round yet, but I think people who take it to an extreme level can start to dissolve within that space, and just make it about the blanket things of race and identity. I think that's one of our issues in America right now is we're just, and we talked about it on the pod, we're just so tribalistic, right?
Right.
And it's just
and the world is becoming more tribalistic. I would say not only America, but and the Black Hebrew Israelite movement is a sign of this, is that people are trying to find their identity, and a lot of times they're doing it with their culture or their race or their ethnicity. Yeah. Countries are closing up shop. They're closing their borders. They're becoming more nationalistic. Right. So we are becoming more tribal. You know.
I will say what's important though is to understand when you definitely don't want to run your life through racism and through all of these different things. But I think what's important also is to understand the reprogramming that does have to take place with certain groups of people. And referring to that in our own community, there is a massive mental reprogramming that needs to happen because of what has been done, the targeting of it, and the things that we've done and the things that we've become accustomed to and what we believe, whether it's health, whether it's, who's against you. There is a massive reprogramming that does need to happen for our group of people simply because of what they've gone through. Just like when you look at the Jewish culture, what I love about them is they are constantly programming them. When I say program, I'm talking about reinforcing the mind with their heritage and where they come from, and understand who our forefathers are, understood that we are resilient because we came through this. We overcame the Holocaust. Right. We are here. So the narrative that is being told to them is a narrative that says, even though things are hard, we can overcome.
Well, it's interesting. They did a survey of Jewish people, and they said the number one defining thing of their life, the number one, even more than their religion, is the Holocaust. So their kind of worldview, their perspective, their identity, so a large percentage of them, the majority of them, have found their identity in the Holocaust. And so what does that tell you? Is that a trauma-based identity? Is that, because it's even more prominent in their psyche than even their religious belief. Like because you can have a religious Jew and an atheist Jew. The one thing that both of them have in common is how high they regard the remembrance of the Holocaust. You know, and not letting that happen again, and making sure that we're constantly reminded, their culture and community is constantly reminded of it. You know, and so we have all the movies, and we have all of this, the documentaries. It's all based upon World War II.
Which is why you will have
you
will have like a Democrat like Chuck Schumer and Chuck Schumer and Bernie Sanders, who are Jewish, who people like Ilhan Omar and AOC don't like, because they're still, even though they're on the most liberal spectrum, they're still pro-Israel. And they get mad at that because they're like, they want the party to go in another direction. But that's the thing, because regardless of how progressively less religious and atheistic a Jewish person, like Jerry Seinfeld, he's an atheist.
Right.
He's a self-proclaimed atheist, Jewish, but he does not believe God exists. But completely united in these anti-Semitic remarks, right? Like because of the Holocaust, like what you just said, like there's an ethnic approach to it that's greater than religion. And so my question is, because I'm not African American, so I could give my comments on it, but I'm not posed to per se, I think, be a thinker that particularly takes. I'm not a Moses to African Americans, if that put it that way.
I'm no Moses to African Americans, so I'm just prefacing that right now.
You might be, but more than like what these individuals are saying, Kyrie and Ye, of like, we got to be in charge of blank and blank and blank. That is just a byproduct of a greater motivation that Jewish people have done coming out of the Holocaust. So when I've sat with like what you said, a lot of black church leaders and Jewish people, they have more commonality than a white person does with a Jewish person who happens to be white, or a white person and a black person, because you have African Americans who have endured slavery, which was a much more grotesque slavery than Jewish people had faced in that sense of the Egyptian slavery and Babylonian slavery and stuff like that. But they are relatable to say, hey, we both have been slaves. Jews have the Holocaust as well, that not all, but many have gone through. They have aunts and uncles who've gone through, and parents and family members. So there is this idea of oppression that does unite them, but the motivation for African Americans and Jewish people have been completely different. And so for Jewish people, per se, it has not been one that they have felt people have had to reconcile for them. They just say, hey, we're going to go out there. We're going to make sure this doesn't happen again. And so their motive and what they do is every Passover and every Sabbath for practicing Jewish people, which a lot of people who are in charge are practicing Jewish people. They're every week they're reminiscing on what happened in the past, but they're not using it as a way that impales them. They're using it as a way of, that's why we have to drive forward. And I think for African American leaders and voices, there has to be more conversations, I think, of what it takes to move forward, rather than, well, this is what happened, this is what blah blah blah, this is what's going on. Someone has to be like, this is what we got to do. We have to unite. And I think it was beautiful what Malcolm X was doing and Martin Luther King Jr. And I think someone once said, like recently said, like, where have they been since those days? Like, where's that same impact and voice? Maybe it gets shut out faster and sooner. I don't know. I don't know enough of it, but so I'm not talking about the theories on why they are or aren't around, but just the reality of there has to be, like what Nipsey was doing, there has to be more due. Like Nipsey was working on this documentary. He was actively educating the people and moving in that direction. Like we have to see that in the black community to move forward, rather than more so, at least what I see a lot is the talk of like, hey, this is what's going wrong. This is what's going wrong. Like I've never heard a Jewish person say, Germany owes me because of the Holocaust. They've built museums to say, this ain't never gonna happen again. Right, we walked it together. Yeah, and Israel. They put one in Germany, and it was like, and y'all gonna know what y'all did. And they put it in the educational curriculum too, so people in Germany have to learn about it, right? So there's certain levels where they've said, we're not gonna ask y'all to do something for us. We're gonna get out there. We're gonna collect our resources, and we're gonna do what we need to do to make sure this doesn't happen again.
I love what you said, and I do want to speak on this because there's a big difference, and coming as a life coach, when I deal with a lot of different people, there's something here that is so beautiful when it comes to this idea. There's a difference between vision and goals. They're first cousins, but they have distinctive personalities. When you talk about a vision is overarching. A vision is something that's big. It's grandiose. It's the desired outcome. This is the vision. We as Black people have great vision. Mm-hmm. We want to be able to be in these positions. We should be able to be here. We should be in the White House. We should take over this. We should, we have great vision. But what we lack are goals. And when I say goals are those small things that you can do that get you closer to your vision of wanting to be able to own things. When you look at Socrates and Aristotle, they believed in two things. And really it's the idea of building confidence in our community again, building trust in our community that if we say we're going to do something, we're not running off of emotion. We've actually got feet behind it. And when you look at the two of them, how you build confidence, I love how Socrates and Aristotle said it. They said two different things, but they were both right. Socrates said how you begin to build confidence is internal exploration. And what that is it's basically saying, listen, if this is what I want to do, then let me start at a grassroots and just start with a small goal of doing something. For instance, if I'm going to build a house and I go through all of the thing, I learn it. How do I go? Internal exploration. What does that look like? I lay the first brick. After I lay the first brick, I lay the second brick, and now I'm building confidence in myself to make it happen. And before you know it, boom, you got a house, you built confidence. Aristotle talked about external exploration. External exploration is really reprogramming the mind to say, in those moments where I feel discouraged in my internal exploration, or in my internal exploration, when you have external imprinting he talked about, it's looking around at individuals who have done it before and borrowing their confidence to say that I can do this as well. Where we look at it is, instead of doing external imprinting and saying individuals like a Malcolm X or Martin Luther King or A.G. Morgan, or you look at A.G. Morgan who created the stoplight and the toilet and all these individuals who, Washington Carver, you look at all of these individuals who've done great things. Instead of using the external imprint to say, man, they did it, I can do it. Looking at the Jackie Robinsons, if they can do it, I can do it. Let's use that external imprint, borrow from their confidence, borrow from what they did to move forward. Those things allow us to be able to set the goals that are necessary for us to move forward as a people. And the beautiful thing is for us to understand that there's room at the table for everybody. Mm-hmm. Your success doesn't equal my failure. Yeah. If I'm going to have a table, then I'm going to use your gifting. 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 It's what we're doing right now in this podcast to move us forward, instead of saying, I got to be the person. I got to be the head. I got to be the one that floss. So when you talk about our movement in the Black or African-American community, you're 100%. We have to move away from the emotionalism of what has happened to us and what we see, unify and understand there are smarter ways to be able to I got to say this. In the middle of the riots that happened when people were getting shot, there was a Black sheriff who came to our church, and she wanted to weigh in on this topic when everybody, all the shootings were happening.
I mean, like the George Floyd
when the George Floyd
LA
situation, the LA stuff that was happening, Breonna Taylor, all these things, individuals who were getting shot by police officers. She said, we have to understand as a people, your first response isn't to fight and want to get bugged. No, this ain't gonna happen to me again. She's Black, and she's higher up in the sheriff. She says, your first thing is I need to win, but let me do everything that I gotta do, and there are other means to be able to fight this. After it's done, you get the badge number, you head over there, you go and you get the ACLU involved, you get all of these individuals involved, because there's other ways to do it. Why am I saying that? Is because instead of emotional outbursts where we get to see it as a Black people in the African-American community, is we get to come together and say, what are our vision? This is our vision. Now let's come together and create the goals and the steps that are going to allow us to get there, because there are other ways that we can earn a seat at the table.
So give me some goals then, because the response was a complete failure maybe not complete, depending on how you look at it, but as far as like the cities where the marches were done, the protests where the marches were done, there's now more crime than ever. The community, the BLM fundraising, all that money, it went to no good. Nothing was built no positive results. So then what are those specific goals that the Black community needs to start doing? Specific goals. What would have been the best response to George Floyd? We're looking back on it now. We could look back on the past 3 years and say, okay, this was done good, positive as a result. This was done positive. This was done positive. This was done. We built something as a result of this, instead of just being an emotional protest, and just, scalping people of their millions of dollars and buying mansions for the leaders of the organization. Right. So,
I think what you got in that moment was an emotional outburst of frustration initially.
That had been building up for a very long time.
Oh, absolutely. It
Since
had been
back
building.
with Trayvon Martin.
100% when something wasn't done. And so there's only so much that people are going to take. But what we got here in America was an emotional backlash of the frustration and the tension when you're told you can't react a certain way. You're told you can't do this. And you finally get to the breaking point. Chaos is what ensues after that. Now, do I agree with it? Absolutely not. We were burning down our own communities.
Right.
And then you have opportunists who, the founders of the BLM movement, from what I personally feel, that capitalize on the emotional state of our people, and the empathy coming from majority of it was the liberal white community, like, oh my God, we feel so sorry for them. They capitalized capitalized on that moment and cashed out. Where you go back to those communities and there's been no change that has happened. There's been no growth in that. So the first thing, when you ask me that question, I don't profess to be a sociologist, a Moses or any of those things. But if you ask me, I can just talk. I'm none of those things. But what I can first say is that we have to we have to go beyond emotion. We have to get to a place to where it's not even communication too, because everybody's like, oh, we just got to communicate. No, we communicating all right. The problem is there's no understanding. And this goes across the board for everything. Everybody's communicating. The white liberal, white conservative side is communicating. White liberals are communicating. Blacks are communicating. Black liberals, Black conservatives are now communicating. The problem is everybody's communicating, but nobody's seeking to understand. When you look at the life of Solomon had wisdom because he asked for an understanding heart. And so in this state, the first thing that we have to do is seek to have an understanding of ourselves first, of where are the areas where we're flawed in, where are the areas that we get to come together in, and how do we unify in all of the different areas, whether it's the judicial branch, whether it's in the entertainment industry, whether it's in the food industry. How do you get those leaders together to say, how are we going to come together and create something that puts us in a situation?
We've heard that. We've been hearing that for years, though. Like, we just need to have a conversation. That's a popular word that's thrown around. Let's just have a conversation. And so, but I mean, I guess my question is, I don't have the answer. I'm not a part of the community, but my question is like what you said. You have the overall vision. We know what we want. We're saying it loud and proud and clear. But what are the specific actions that need to be taken? I know Ice Cube has suggested some things. I know Ye is talking about things, but like, what are the boots on the ground, like nitty gritty action steps that need to take place to get the
I think it starts in our community first. I think it starts in our community first, with us sitting down and doing what I talked about. Is you're having now this reprogramming where you're sitting down, you're having the entrepreneurs, you're having these individuals who are sitting down who don't have a slated viewpoint, who don't have attained it. Hey, I'm building this school because the white people aren't going to build it for us, so I'm building. No, that's not the right conversation. The conversation is to bring our children together, go into those communities and start reprogramming their minds to say, listen, this is who you get to be. You got all of these different things that can happen. Here are the programs that we have in place that are going to build your mind up, build your thing. I'm not talking programs as a low income program or conversation, but you're bringing these entrepreneurs in who look like them, who sound like them, but also you're bringing entrepreneurs in who look like you guys, who look like other people, so that you're shifting and changing and taking control of the narrative that says that they're against you. You can't go to this school. You got to do it this way and that way. It's bringing those together and having those type of forums. When I say forum, I mean having those type of not conversations, but I know you're saying conversation, but having those arenas where they can come. They can ask the hard questions that they need to ask and then get resourced in a direction that's going to move them in that direction of where they're at.
Yeah. I think the church is the hope of the future and the hope of the world, man. Like, I think the answer is the church. I think the church has been ineffective right now in this area. The church is effective in many areas, but we can also be ineffective in certain areas at the same time. And so I think in providing national solitude in the area of conversation of race and culture and identity is, we've lost, like what went viral just like a couple years ago was that beautiful statement. People could look it up, is what Billy Graham said at one of his crusades regarding African Americans. And he just challenged the white people there. And he said, I just want to talk to the black people. The gospel's for you. Jesus is for you. It's not a white gospel. It's not a white, and it really went viral in a lot of the black community to be like, man, this was beautiful. Look at what Billy Graham as a white person is saying for us, and how the scriptures are true, that there's no Jew, there's no Greek. There was this Jewish supremacy. You see it all over. You see it in Revelations. You see it in many conversations between Peter and Paul. They got in an argument because Peter was sitting in the Jews only side of the room while they were having lunch. And, Paul came in and was like, man, the gospel's greater than limiting this conversation here to just either culture bias or race. And so I think part of it, there's a lot of natural things like judicial, and there's negative effects that still often come from redlining. Because I think what a lot of people don't realize is the wealth that you see in white communities is generational wealth. 100%. So it's not a lot of it's not quick money. It's money that's existed for generations. So if you just look at a white person who, and even a Jewish person, a lot of their money has happened through generations and generations. And so where people say, oh man, look, there's no redlining today. Well, yeah, it's not today, but just one generation ago, it did exist. And so it has impeded an African American's ability to create generational wealth. For Hispanic people who come to this country, oftentimes you'll ask someone that's from Guatemala, Costa Rica, Mexico, who come to America. If you ask them who come over here, are you guys going to get rich? Most of them will tell you no, but my kids might be. Their kids might be,
because I'm gonna set them up,
because they're like, I'm gonna work hard and I'll make sure they go to school, and I'm gonna make sure and I'm gonna do what I got to do. And so I think part of this address is we have to have a conversation about the now, but we also have a conversation of what are we setting up for kids, the next generation. And so an African American, I think, has to go, not just about it, because the lowest percentage of people who have life insurance, health insurance, things like that is African Americans, one of the largest percentage, because it is a very like, man, I got to worry about today. I got to get food on the table today, right? And 50% of all African Americans, the women, are single mothers. Right. And so they're like, man, I'm working 2 jobs just to put food on the table, right? Like I can't worry about putting $150 in this fund for my kid. No. I can't. So there's this lack of education and generational wealth, and it's a very right now mentality. But when you look at any other community that has generational wealth, or even an African American who has generational wealth, a lot of it has come through compounding interest of generations, that delayed gratifications that have gone down. And so not only do I think the church is a huge component, that the church has to really rise up in this hour, really be the leader, and pastors have to unite, because right now even pastors are like completely divided on so many different conversations. So we really have to be united in a lot of areas as pastors. But I also think people then have to get to a place, my great grandfather was a mechanic, my grandfather was a plumber, and then my dad was a pastor. And one of the first things my dad said was, he said, I'm gonna get a second house by the time I'm in my 40s so that I can sell it when my sons turn 21 or they get married, and I'm going to give them each $50,000 to start their life. That was a generational thing. And my dad did say no really up until he was almost 60. He said no to a lot of things to make sure his kids could get what they need. I want them to be able to get a house. I want them. And my dad lived very, very modest for almost 60 years. Now my dad, he'll be like, oh, I could buy that. I could buy that. Man, for the first 6 years, he was like, I'll make sure Adam has a house. I'm going to make sure Caleb has a house. I'm going to make sure Nathan has a house. He did because he was like, my grandfather was a plumber. My dad was a plumber. My great-grandfather was a mechanic. We're going to grow out of this thing. And then even my grandfather gave my dad a loan to make sure that he could get a better house, you know? So I think you have to start thinking generationally if you want to compoundingly interest generational wealth. So for whatever Ye is doing, and I've heard him even say, he said, man, I want to make sure my kids are billionaires. I think that's smart thinking, you know, that you have to think to yourself, whatever I'm going to accomplish. And Jewish people are very, 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 very smart with that, because you'll notice every time you go to a hospital, every time you go to a college, buildings are named after Jewish people because they recognize that the wealth is in their legacy. The wealth is in generations. So they say, I'm going to build that building so my grandkids know that I had that building, instead of saying, I'm going to get the Cadillac Escalade that's going to be worth nothing in 5 years, right? And that's big even in my Hispanic community too, you know, buying all the gold change and getting all the, I got friends that could barely pay their rent, but they got a 2023, Mercedes AMG.
Let me say this too. You bring up legacy. I will bring this up. But this is a key characteristic of patriarchal societies. Is leaving a legacy. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. That's what I'm saying. So when you subvert what God intended human nature to function as, you're going to have a devolution of these norms. And so there's a key link between fatherless homes and the lack of legacy, the lack of generational wealth. So you can't have your eggs and eat it too. You can't hack human nature, right? So you bring up an important concept that's critical to the success of Black, of Arabs, of Jewish, of whatever minority, of whites, whatever. But in order to do that, it also that's very patriarchal. That's very a patriarchal mindset where because the woman nurtures, the woman cares, the woman is empathetic, but the man is the one who fights, the man is the one who creates, the man is the one who's thinking about his name and his legacy and his future. So that's coming back to what we've talked about in the past. One of the key solutions to which we've talked about,
ethical and moral dilemmas
to
of America.
African Americans in particular, with the broken homes, the fatherless homes, and how that's a key component to
the degradation,
the problems that we're seeing, the being married to the welfare state, and so on and so forth. So,
but I feel like there's a big part of understanding, and the reason why I led with there has to be a reprogramming of the mind is because you can talk legacy, you can put the greatest business plan in front of somebody, you can put the greatest financial plan in front of somebody, but if I don't change the way of how I think about money, if I don't change the way of how I think about society as a whole, you can give me the greatest plan to become a great legacy builder, but if I don't change the way that I think about things and the perspective of how I view it, none of that's gonna help. And so maybe for certain communities that's great, but when we talk about leaving a legacy, you have to shift even that terminology within the Black community. It's just recently became really popular. But when you talk about legacy moves, you talk about saving for a house, their mentality is survival. Yeah. The mentality isn't to thrive. Right. And so when we talk about shifting and leaving legacy, we first have to let people know that you can leave a legacy. Yeah. And that part of leaving that legacy starts with you shifting your belief that the world is against you, that you're only limited to your block, to your hood, to your projects of where you are. You're limited to what those things are. So there is specifically for our community, there is a heavy, and I love how you brought up the church, because the church and podcasts like these and what we're seeing with all of these things, it's shifting the way our minds think. Church has the ability to shift a person whose life is in sin to start thinking when the Holy Spirit hits them, like, man, maybe there's a different way that I could live my life. It is these thought-provoking environments that give the Holy Spirit the opportunity to grab somebody. In the same way, when I am around individuals who think different, that look like me, or I see individuals who they tell me were against me my whole life, rallying around to see me succeed, it starts to change the way I think, and it begins to rewire all of the lies that I've come to believe, to where now I can switch into legacy mode. Now I can get in front of somebody, and you're seeing this now with all of these big conventions and these companies that are the majority of them are led by blacks, and they're teaching them credit. Mm-hmm. I grew up my whole life and didn't even know anything about credit.
Yeah.
Like,
right.
At all. I thought, if you can't pay for it cash is king. But now I'm realizing when I got older, I'm trying to get a house. They're like, you got zero credit. What you mean? Like, I ain't got no bills.
Yeah.
Or I have no debt. So what I'm saying is there's a game, there's a psychological side of it that we have to rewire ourselves, and the communities like the church are a rewiring place.
Yeah.
The platforms like this
well,
are rewiring.
it's education, and
100%.
I think this is what Kanye is doing. He's starting his school. He's focusing on engineering, or
Absolutely.
more specifically, practical things about the world and how the world functions, teaching us, the things they don't teach us in school. They don't teach us how credit works. They don't teach us, how to buy a house, how to take out, how to loan, how to, and so, and I think where the public education system is failing, that's where the church can rise up.
100%. But you got to be open enough to go there.
Those
but that's what we
education,
just
but
talking about.
also this is what the benefits of the church, because the church is the only place where you can run into a 70-year-old man who can give me wisdom on this specific thing.
Yes.
Or, I just got a cat for my daughter. I didn't have anybody around me who owned cats. A woman at the church, she's a cat lover. Hey, Johnette, how do you my cat's peeing everywhere. How do I do? What do you advise me to do? She offered her help. That's what I'm saying. The church is a place that where you encounter a diversity background of people that can offer you support for whatever problem that you have or need.
Yeah, it's a town hall. We talked about it last week, but we want to work. I talked about what I want to do for my son, but we were just in a conversation to say, how can we bring that to the church? Last week we were talking about how when my son turns 6, he's going to have to start learning coding and engineering and doing a school that Elon Musk has and stuff like that. But then just 2 days ago, I sent it in a group chat with some of the guys, and there's a company that will come in and facilitate coding classes for kids. And so we were talking to the guys. We were like, how can we bring this to the church?
100%.
And how can we educate like young ones, where if there is a single mother, or there is, and that's why I think it's the beauty of the church. And some people don't agree with that. What some people have to understand is if you come from a traditional generational household, right? I'm not going to call it white privilege or whatever. I'm just going to call it a generational household. See, a lot of people who are not African American, or maybe even not Hispanic, they'll say, hey, you guys just teach the Bible. That's it. Just shut your mouth on everything else. But what they don't realize is you're saying that because your house is taking care of it. Because you live in a predominantly white house, or just a predominantly affluent house, it could not be white. But you're saying, Mike, this is stuff my parents taught me. This is stuff. Well, if you come from a single mother from the hood who barely can make it,
come on, Anna.
She doesn't have the ability nor the energy to deal with her son, to tell him, all right, I just got home, I got another night shift, but we're gonna take you to coding classes now that are $300 a month. Dog, that her car payment ain't even $300 a month, right? And so that's why I think that the church really is and can embody some of these things, because that's what we talked about. We said, how can we hire this company? They're called Code Ninjas. How can we hire this company to facilitate youth and children's programs at our church? That we will either subsidize the cost or make it as low as possible, that anyone can afford to say, hey, if you want your child to learn about engineering and coding, once a month we're going to have on-site learning you to be an engineer, right? At the church. This is where, like what you just said, this is where the church can thrive. This is where the church needs to get our head out of the idea that we're not allowed to talk in spaces that aren't just emphatically scripture by scripture.
That's a great point.
Because that's where people are getting tripped up, right?
All of Christ for all of life. That's a
beautiful
phrase
saying.
of somebody.
I like that.
Church.
Who said that?
I think I said that. Like
you say it one more time.
I made that up.
all of
Christ for all of life. No, that's Doug Wilson.
That's
Doug
beautiful.
Wilson.
But look, but even with this, the church is the greatest. The church is that greatest melting pot for all of those people who are in there. You got entrepreneurs who are sitting there. You've got people who are in other spaces who want to hand it down, who want to transition. And so when the church is open, that's what I love what we do here. There's so many different avenues that we have.
Yeah.
And you have retired women who serve at our outreach center.
100%. So you can go there and have
it's
everything.
amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. And what some people forget is historically the Black church has been the town hall for African Americans.
It always has been.
It's been the educational hub. That's why you'll get Black pastors who will promote politicians, and they'll say, "Oh, you need to get that out of there." Now, I may not always agree with the politician that pastor may promote. But part of the reason why that happens in the Black church is because there isn't a generational education that exists. So some, not all, many, but some Black pastors will say, "Hey, we're going to talk about finance. We're going to talk about health. We're going to talk about this." I mean, that's the approach we've tried to take at our church. Like, we have a health center at our church. We teach about organic living, and some people go, "Man, that's weird. Like, a church shouldn't talk about those things." Well, you should if a large majority of your church right now, as we're doing this podcast right now, the door next to us, there's a funeral going on right now. And so when you have a community that's often dying prior to before they're even 60 because of heart disease, because of diabetes, because of obesity, and that's in the Hispanic community, but it's in the African American community, then the church, as great Padre Caleb just said, all of Christ for all of life, like you do need to embody Jesus Christ in all areas of life, and people need to stop being so offended so fast to say, "Oh, they just said something I'm not in agreement with," or "They just said something I'm not comfortable with." Like, man, get over it. People go to work every day, and your boss says stuff you don't agree with, but boy, oh boy, you cashing in that paycheck every other week. So it's okay to go to a place and be like, "Man, someone messaged me today in my Instagram, was like, loved your podcast. There's one thing I didn't agree with," and they told me, and I said, "I'm so glad that you think for yourself." I'm glad you didn't agree
beautiful.
with. Thank you that you thought for yourself. Why were you looking
over there? You know, I'm just curious. Why were you looking over there? Did somebody want to say something? I'm just curious.
When I was talking?
No. When I started saying something, you were like looking over here and smiling at somebody. It's just really bothering me right now. Okay.
Maybe I just what?
Okay.
I wanted to say it's actually really important that you said, church, like we should have other stuff.
Jump on the mic. This is our resident Gen Z expert.
Come on.
Grab Nancy or Chelsea's or so. Just grab their headset. This is our resident Gen Z expert right here. What were you saying?
I think it's really important because my grandparents, they came here from Costa Rica and they made a church. They built a church from nothing. From a whole basketball court, they turned it into a church. And now they teach the people there financial wealth and generational wealth and how to get out of your debt. Because some of these people are immigrants. They don't have their papers. They're not citizens. They don't know how to do this stuff. They don't get it anywhere else. So if they're coming to a church, it's the only community they got in their life. It's the only people that understand them, that can relate to them in their language and their culture. It's like, how are people going to say you can't have that in the church when they're not getting it anywhere else? Or like the educational system, like they're not teaching the kids the right thing. So if the church doesn't do it, then who's going to do it? Like, who in their life is going to be the person to direct them in the right direction? Right?
That's beautiful.
That's a great point.
What city did your grandparents build a church?
El Monte.
El Monte.
Right
East
in
LA.
like the ghetto area too. Like there's shootings around there and stuff that they had to deal with in the 80s and 90s and stuff.
Dang, yeah, that's proud. You're spot on, Alizé. I mean, that's it. That's good. That's our resident Gen Z expert.
Hello.
Give it up.
Giving us that real life.
I love that. Giving us that real.
Yeah. But and I think that's the beautiful part about it is that when Jesus came, I love when he answered the Pharisees were trying to catch him up. He was like, "Who is it who needs the physician? Is it those who are healthy or those who are sick?" And that idea that there are symptoms that come from roots of emotional sickness, those type of things that we as the church, when I say we, I'm coming in on that side of it, but that we get to be able to address those things. That's why I call myself an entrepastor, right? So I'm a businessman on one sense, but my principles come from the Word of God and being able to build that up, because the most dangerous group in the world is a group of believers who aren't dependent financially upon somebody else to cut them off if they hold true to their beliefs. And this is why entrepreneurship is so I am so for it, especially in the church world as well, because when you understand that now, one of the scariest things that happens for most pastors, they won't say certain things that they know they need to say because it may affect their tithe, their income people. So when you have a pastor or people in the community who can offer up different streams of income, or you're not solely relying upon a person to give you something or cut you off or to cancel you because you're building that in the business world, that's a powerful group of people who not only are infiltrating on the business side or the corporate side or in the market space, right? But we're also taking front and partnering with our pastors in the beliefs that we have to be able to say, listen, we not only are going to give you life here or life eternally, because that's, I think that's what a lot of pastors focus on. It's not about this life right now. You know, it's about your eternal glory and the treasures that you're going to have.
Right. You'll get your castle.
But I got bills. My life's going to go off. So I got to be able to eat.
And my kids are going to create this cycle of poverty again.
100. So it's got to be broken. And I think I was watching. It's so funny you brought this up. I'm in church, and I'm watching Pastor Diego preach, and he's talking on every single point that you can talk on. That in any other space you would get canceled. But because he holds the weight of the people who are here in their heart, he can speak in such a way that they're going to hear him. And I love that, because when you look at Jesus, and I remember he's talking health. He was educating us. When I say us, I mean all the black people were there because, but Jesus always met a physical need as well as a spiritual need. And so when we talk about coming in here, whether it's business, whether it's opening up all of these opportunities to say, hey, you can build your church, you can build that. And I'm pointing to Alize because she was talking about, but when you see these individuals, now we're not just serving them spiritually, we're serving them physically, we're serving them emotionally, we're serving them relationally. Now the church becomes the one-stop shop, or the hub, if you will, where people can say, listen, I may not even be saved, but I know there's help there. And then that opens the door for their lives to be transformed like never before. Well,
that's beautiful. I think we learned today all of Christ for all of life. That's right. That's a good learning aspect. Well, here was the thing, because we're done now with the podcast, but the thing was, this wasn't even supposed to be the conversation. We had all these videos and stuff like that, but I'm glad the conversation happened, and I'm glad for people that joined us and tuned in for it. It's probably going to be our most controversial episode we've ever done, in just terms of people showing their opinion and all that. But the beautiful thing is, I don't need to hear your opinion. Get some people around you and talk. That's where this benefits is is getting people together and getting diverse thought in mind to say, yo, what do you think about this? What do you think of this? And how can I learn and grow, right? Like how can I become more empathetic as a believer, ultimately to be able to see the gospel live deeper in a person's life? And if I just shut someone out, because some people will sometimes message me and be like, you shouldn't even have that conversation, or you shouldn't even try to empathize with it because blah, 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 blah. I'm like, but I don't feel like that would be Christ-like, because as you hear, then you hear where a person's pain comes from. Because anytime someone's passionate about something, it means it's a pain point for them. So if I'm just going to shut it out, then I'm shutting out their pain. And I'm just like, well, I don't want to hear about that. You need to just adopt the way I think. But if I hear it and we explore it, then we can, like I feel like what we've talked about the past hour and a half led to 10 minutes of a beautiful solution of where Christ comes in and where the church comes in. And it took us an hour and a half to get to that point. We couldn't have bypassed it and just jumped in and said, how does the church solve all these things? How is all of Christ for all of life? We had to explore an hour and a half of thought to get to this point, this moment, bro, where we all can walk away and be like, man, we're not there yet, but at least some of us have something in mind that we can strive towards, and to be able to talk with other people and see where it goes. So, Jeff, man, you're welcome anytime.
Man, I appreciate y'all, man.
Listen.
Y'all didn't grill me. I'm good. I'm good. Yo,
it wasn't even. The conversation wasn't even supposed to be this, but I'm glad it happened because I enjoyed it, every moment of it. So
I appreciate y'all, man. Thank you,
man. Next time's gonna be good.
Yeah.
All right, y'all. We'll actually play videos next time and commentate on.
There you go. I watched them while I was ready. Well, I was coming. I had thoughts, but we with it.
Yeah, well, that's what happens. God bless everybody.